Police union Ipusa is calling on government not to give any more money to the SAPS. This until the root cause of poor performance can be diagnosed. The request comes after the release of crime statistics which show violent crimes are still on the increase. Let's speak about this now with the General Secretary Mpho Kwinika, who joins us this morning. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. It is a sad state of affairs that every single quarter for the last few years we've seen an increase in some of the most violent and atrocious crimes. Your initial thoughts on the statistics that were shared by the Minister and his team yesterday?
Good morning. The statistics are shocking and they indicate that South Africans are living in fear. The President have indicated this in his SONA statement earlier this month, that he wants to make sure that he ensures that South Africans are rid of this fear from criminals. But this is not shocking, Rupi, because in 2012, the National Planning Commission have identified the problems of leadership in the South African Police Service. Hence, they have come up with the NDP Vision 2030 to make sure that we get the correct leadership to deal with the situation that we have in the South African Police Service. Until such time that we have competent and good leadership in the helm of the South African Police Service, the issue of crime is going to continue unabated.
Now, you've called on various measures to be taken on in this regard, and one of them is that funding must stop to the SAPS. Isn't this counterproductive in your opinion? Should we not have resources continuing to go into the SAPS to perhaps improve the state of affairs there? What is the reasoning behind your view?
Our view is to put pressure on government to pay attention to the ills the South African Police Service is faced with. There is no change in the fight against crime if we don't have the crime combating strategy that is geared towards fighting crime in our country. There will be no change if we do not get our police minds taken back to what we call basic policing in our country. We need to make sure that the least that the South African taxpayers are paying towards this department is optimally utilized so that we safeguard the lives and properties of our citizens. I think since then, again, I want to go back to 2012. After this problem was established, we have seen a deteriorating departments that were poor, which were not functioning fully. We have seen the rise in violent and organized crime. And this thing is going on and the wave is not coming down. Hence, we are calling on the President to embark on the process of reforming the South African Police Service. That is what we are trying to say or want to achieve when we say, don't give more funds to a dead horse. Let's try and find out what are the problems, and then when all those issues are rectified, then we put money where our mouth is.
One of the big problems that we have seen is that many of the police officers in the system have themselves become part of the problem in that they engage in criminal activity. How do we deal with that, especially yourselves as an independent policing union? How do you think that this particular part of the problem should be dealt with?
Like I said earlier on, the issue of leadership is very important. The South African Police Service is a highly regulated environment. Police officers, when they report for work in the morning, if they're not on duty at 6 o'clock, they are supposed to be there at 1:45. When they knock off duty, they are supposed to be there either 15 or 20 minutes later. You know, the times that is there, it makes the commanders to be able to control the members on the ground. So you need to know where your members are during the shift up until they are inspected in the afternoon when they leave or in the morning when they leave. So these are issues of leadership, and we want to leave this to the management of the South African Police Service to manage the service. And we should be allowed as a union to play an oversight role over what the police are doing. And what we are doing currently We are saying the police are not doing enough with the resources which they have. They need to, the government need to get involved and make sure that we reform the SAPS so that it is geared towards fighting crime in our country.
What about the role of the rest of the legal system in that you find that when there are criminal activities that are taking place, there are arrests that happen and convictions, but then you find that people get released on situations of parole or whatever the case may be, and then they become repeat offenders. The statistics show that a lot of the rapes that take place are done by repeat offenders and not necessarily new rapists, if you will, coming onto the scene. So the role that the legal system can play in conjunction with the SAPS to curb the scourge of crime that we currently have in the country. What is your view in that regard?
Look, the police arrest the suspects and they present them before the courts, which is the Department of Justice. And then from there, when they are convicted, they go to jails, which are correctional services. We think that there must be proper coordination of activities amongst these departments to make sure that those people who qualify for parole, they are not, there's no possibility for them when released on parole that they will go and repeat and become repeat offenders. There are a lot of activities which need to take place between the South African Police Service, the Department of Justice and Corrections to make sure that those that are returned, because the police cannot stop the communities who deserve to be released on parole to be released on parole. But what we can do is to make sure that those people who are released on parole qualifies to be released on parole.
So community policing forums have become very, very important in different communities around the country. But unfortunately, many people are afraid to become part of those structures only because of the fear of getting ambushed by criminals at any time doing work for the community. How important are these forums and really what kind of investment should go into them?
Community policing forums are very important. This reminds me of the statement made by Professor Lurie Robinson. He is a professor in the University of George in Manson. He once said that because policing is a very critical part of ensuring that communities are safe, communities themselves need to participate in that environment. So there must be a trust of some sort between the police and the communities whom they serve. So the role of policing, it's important. It cannot be complete without the involvement of communities. Policing is the job of communities, and you cannot do policing without community themselves getting involved. Hence, it is important to have them as part of this. But you see, South Africa today, it is not conducive. The space is not conducive for ordinary citizens to participate in policing. But the involvement of President now to say that he wants to see more done, to have CPFs playing the role that they are supposed to be playing in policing, that is also encouraging. But currently, we've seen a lot of them coming out of those structures because they have since been politicized as well. There are a lot of people who had failed political somewhere else. They find themselves into those structures, and they stifles the relationship between the police and even the communities themselves. And those things need to be sorted out.
Thank you very much for those insights and for joining us this morning. That is Mr. Mpho Kwinika, who's the General Secretary of the Independent Policing Union of South Africa, breaking down